muscle contraction. I will explain exactly what you need for the test for your lecture exam, but please feel free go on D2L week 11. There is a link to this video where there is a little bit more detailed explanation of the muscle contraction. Okay, so what happens? Electrical signal, which we call action potential, arrives from our brain or spinal cord through the special nervous cell, which is called motor neuron, and then it goes to the muscle cell, muscle fiber, through the special structure right here, where a connection happens between the muscle cell and between the nervous cell. So, action potential travels along the axon to the neuromuscular junction. That's how we call that connection. Very often it's also called synapse. At the neuromuscular junction, here it is. That's the end of the neuron, sometimes called synaptic bulb, and that is part of the muscle cell. So between those two cells, that's what we call synaptic cleft. And at the neuromuscular junction, the axon terminal releases chemical. That chemical is called neurotransmitter. There are different types of neurotransmitters, but the one for skeletal muscles is called acetylcholine. So acetylcholine is released from the nervous cell into the synaptic cleft, the space between two cells, nervous and muscular. Okay, after that, neurotransmitter molecules, acetylcholine molecules, go to the muscle cell and bind to special proteins. That causes action potential to originate and spread through the membrane of the muscle cell. Okay, after the signal is transmitted, electrical signal from the nervous cell to the muscle cell, we don't need that acetylcholine anymore. And there will be a special enzyme called acetylcholine esterase that will destroy acetylcholine and prevents continued muscle fiber contraction. Because if acetylcholine was not destroyed, muscle would continue contracting. So all that sequence of events, when action potential is transmitted from the muscle cell membrane down into the cell and causes muscle contraction or sliding of the myofilaments, actin and myosin, it is called excitation-contraction coupling. It doesn't happen immediately. After electrical signal arrives right here to neuromuscular junction and is transmitted through the neurotransmitter onto the muscle cell membrane, there will be some time before that muscle cell contracts. So that time is called latent period. Time between action potential initiation and the beginning of contraction. That is the surface of muscle cell membrane, sarcolemma. Electrical signal now is spreading right here. We call it also action potential. So it's moving along the sarcomere to special structures called T-tubules, and through the T-tubules it goes inside of the muscle cell. It's also spreading to the sides, to the special T-tubules, which are the parts of the sarcoplasmic reticulum. Remember that sarcoplasmic reticulum contains calcium. As soon as electrical signal arrives, it causes calcium to be released from the sarcoplasmic reticulum and go right here where we have actin and myosin. Those T-tubules, together with terminal cisterns of the sarcoplasmic reticulum sitting on the sides, are called triads. Triads. Okay, so calcium arrives to the actin and myosin, to the sarcomere right here, and causes that sarcomere to shorten or to contract. It happens when thick filaments right here, myosin start attaching their heads to thin filament and pulling thin filaments together. So the sarcomere becomes shorter. That process is called the sliding filament model of muscle contraction. Okay, right here, so let's go again. Electrical signal and action potential arrived. Through the neurotransmitter acetylcholine, it was transmitted to the muscle cell membrane. Through the T-tubules goes down and causes release of calcium from the sarcoplasmic reticulum. That calcium right now goes to actin and causes troponin and tropomyosin to move. Troponin and tropomyosin move away and expose those active sites on the actin. That allows myosin heads to bind to the actin and form connections called cross bridges, connection between the head of myosin and actin. Okay, myosin heads after that start pulling actin together from the left and right side of the sarcomere. That shortens the sarcomere, that shortens the muscle cells and shortens the whole muscle. The muscle contracts. Okay, when actin and myosin form cross bridges, it requires energy of ATP. And ATP, it's not O here, it should be removed. ATP breaks into ADP and phosphorus molecules. That breaking of ATP molecule releases energy, ATP, necessary for muscle contraction, for forming of cross bridges. After cross bridges forms, ADP released, and later it will be restored to ATP and reused. Myosin right here binds to ATP and then later detaches its head from actin attachment side. So myosin using ATP attaches to active side of actin, pulls actin, then detaches. Then the process can repeat again and again until the whole muscle contracts. I encourage you to print this picture and or just use it right here on the screen and explain the whole mechanism of muscle contraction to yourself, or if you have a study partner, explain it to your study partner. So let's start from the beginning. I'll do it for you one more time. Electrical signal from the brain or spinal cord, we call it action potential, arrives through the motor neuron and goes to the connection between the nervous cell and muscle cell. We call it neuromuscular junction. In that junction, neurotransmitter acetylcholine is released from the neuron, end of the neuron, into the synaptic cleft between two cells and acts on the binds on their muscle cell membrane sarcolemma. Electrical signal action potential right now is spreading through the muscle cell membrane sarcolemma, goes down through the T-tubules to the sarcoplasmic reticulum and causes release of calcium from the sarcoplasmic reticulum. That calcium removes troponin and tropomyosin, proteins that cover active sites on actin. Myosin, using ATP energy, binds its heads to actin active sites, forming cross bridges, and pulls actin molecules to each other in the sarcomere. Sarcomere shortens. The whole muscle cell shortens. When all the muscle cells shorten in the muscle, that causes muscle contraction.